when I look back at my experience in the universities, it is very interesting that I have experienced the universities both as a student and as a teacher. But in the first few years, I was primarily experiencing it as a student. But of course, in grad school, you also participate in some teaching assistance work. Then I spent a period of about 10 years teaching university, first in a part-time and then in a full-time capacity. Then I go back to school and get my PhD. Then I started teaching again, right? So the entire duration is over 50 years now. One of the things that is probably easiest for people to imagine or grasp is the idea of grades. So I just recently posted something on LinkedIn about people suggesting that maybe we should do away with grading. And one of the things that got to me is that when I was in undergrad, when I graduated, one of my professors called me into a room and told me that I did really well and I'm among the top students in the graduating class. But if you look at my grades back then, most of my grades were actually in the B+ range. And that was I was among the top students in my graduating class. And now, where I'm teaching, 60+% of the people were getting an A kind of grade or better. And I would say maybe 80 to 90% of the people, if you include the people who are getting A minuses, it would be 80 and 90% of the people. If you give a student a B kind of grade, a B+, it is considered punitive. And sometimes you may need to write a lot of comments, basically have to justify your grade almost. But that was not the case in this place that I'm teaching. 30 years ago, it was not like that. So this whole idea of grade inflation has already caught the attention of a lot of people. So basically what it means is that your grade, is valued less, compared to the same grade that was given 3 decades ago. So what does it mean? It means that we are now loosening our standards, and on paper A means excellent or outstanding or very good, but basically now to use a very blunt expression, even a mediocre student can be getting an A average, where I teach. But of course, it is not intended as an offensive comment to our students. Obviously, among the students who are getting A's, some of them are really strong. Some of them were really highly competent, highly talented students. What is happening is now it is difficult to differentiate the very strong students from the not so strong students, because the grading is within a very narrow range, So I really believe that the grading system that we're now using is problematic, and I try to resist that. But up till recently, I have a different take on things, because, basically, it is like currency, When you have gone through inflation, so now you take a $100 note, it is obviously giving you less purchasing power than the same $100 note 30 years ago. Is it necessarily a problem? I don't know. I take a very pragmatic approach to things. So when people were applying for jobs, when people were applying for scholarships, when people were competing for whatever, what makes me feel better now is that the grades are of decreasing significance. If you say that, if all the applicants for whatever, right, all have straight A grades, right, then you obviously will have to be looking for something else to differentiate between them. So I really do not think it is a huge problem, but what it reflects is a more disturbing problem. So what is that? This is like the understanding of education as a transaction from the student's perspective. Like, I'm here to get good grades, and this good grades would, in theory, give me some advantage when I'm competing for resources and opportunity within and outside of academia. And because it doesn't cost the professors anything to give good grades, right? So it is like you're printing money. When people say, like, give me more cash, and then you do that, when it doesn't cost you anything, right? It is easy for us to do that. And very often you have people basically telling you that, like, why do you want to waste time fighting with the student? Why do you want to waste time fighting the system, saying that, like, this does not deserve an A grade? I'm going to keep my standards, and therefore, people like that, and now I would say systematically punished by the system, and they would be like spending more time and energy. And what is happening, like, to me, is like, I really feel bad for doing this, like insisting that I want to resist the great inflation trend, right? Because soon enough, I realized that I would be just punishing the students who have chosen to take my classes, because if they went somewhere else, they would have gotten better grades. And when I consider this particular reality, then I said to myself, okay, maybe you should just grade them like your colleagues do, right? Otherwise, you would not be fair to the students who are taking your class. So this is what I have been doing since that realization. So coming back to this, right? So what is the problem behind this? The problem behind this is, like, we think that we are coming to university to get grades. Like, ideally, we are coming to the universities to learn, right? So what are we learning? We'll learn something that is valuable to ourselves, something that would be useful in our lives, not necessarily in a pragmatic, like, job-seeking kind of way. But again, this is another trend of the universities. Back in the days when I was in university, you can be like majoring in geography or history for that matter, and end up like applying for a job as a manager in the bank after you graduate. That was totally doable in my days. So you came to the university to get educated, to pursue knowledge that you're interested in. Now you go to university to get a degree to make yourself more employable. And that in itself is not wrong, right? I just want to distinguish between these two set of like objectives. Is it anything wrong that someone wants to get some training or education so that I become more employable and then like lead a better life? That totally is a reasonable, natural, legitimate interest. What I'm missing is that, are there still opportunities for people who just want to learn something valuable, which may or may not be connected to being employable or like earning more money? Like, I just want to pursue that knowledge. I think that space still exists, but it is increasingly blurred, right? Like the people who are seeking employability and financial reward, and the people who are seeking knowledge and like inspiration or self-improvement, these two objectives are increasingly blurred. And blurring is not a problem. I'm very comfortable with like nebulous boundaries. But what is disturbing to me is that the space for this, for like learning and self-improvement, has been basically increasingly marginalized or squeezed out. So the majority of energy, resources, and space within the university are now focused on employability and financial reward. And the worst part about that is like a good part of that discourse is actually a lie. Meaning that like the universities are creating the illusion of promising students or giving them some hope that like, oh, you do this, you get your degree, you become more employable, and they will be financially rewarded. And when I say that it is increasingly a lie, I think I have empirical evidence to support me, meaning that, well, increasingly you have students getting the credentials that do not really lead to a better job or higher income. So while at the same time, we are also squeezing the space for learning and self-improvement. So this is like why I'm worried about the future of universities.